Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending upon where in the world you are watching this. Welcome to Afternoons with Aces, the implementation series. This is session 1, What Defines Success, of what is intended to be 10 videos on Oracle Fusion or EBS implementations. That is Lee Briggs and I's main area of expertise. Our agenda for this video and these sessions, we'll go through introductions first. I'll give you my background, and then Lee will introduce himself. He'll then talk about the series overview. As stated previously, our intention is to release 12 videos. Each of them should be about 20 to 30 minutes long, covering a different topic of an implementation. This one, we're going to talk about what defines success. We're going to begin at the end. I like to do that on all my implementations or all my tasks or whatever I'm working on. When I'm complete, how will I know it's done, and how will I know you're happy, Mr. Customer, or my boss, or how will I know my customer is unhappy and what I need to do to fix it? We'll talk about how to get started, identifying who the stakeholders are, define who's accountable, talk about the project goals, and then discuss the what, the why, and the how to do all of these things. So introductions. My name is Thomas Simkus. I'm an Oracle Applications Implementation Consultant since 1998. Since that time, I've actually held various roles as an end implementer of the software, practice director. I've been a CFO, a COO, senior vice president of global revenue for Oracle Cloud Applications. So I've certainly done a lot of roles and a lot of project work. I got my Bachelor of Arts in Economics and Business Administration from Ursinus College all the way back in 1995. I got my Juris Doctorate, which is a fancy way of saying I got my law degree from the James A. Beasley School of Law of Temple University in 2002. I'm an Oracle ACE Pro. I achieved my Oracle ACEness in 2014, and I do continue to maintain it. These videos are a great way for me to do that. I was the OETUG Star Presenter of the Year in 2017. I'm a CPA, or Certified Public Accountant, in the state of Pennsylvania. I am still active. And I'm a member of the Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and American Bar Association, retired. I am not a practicing attorney. Lee?
Thank you, Tom. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Lee Briggs. I have worked with the Oracle applications since 2001. I started with EBS Release 11. I kept up to date with EBS until 2012, 2013, when cloud became generally available. Since then, I've focused exclusively on cloud or Fusion applications. I was part of the first financials and HR implementations in America. I was part of the first implementation of financials, projects, supply chain, and HR in the world. So that was kind of cool history back there. My degree is in accounting and finance. I got that from the University of Leicester back in 96. Got my master's in management studies in 97. As I said, well, Tom said, he's an Oracle ACE. I got my ACEness a year earlier than him in 2013. I am currently an ACE Pro, so that is the second highest level, I guess, under ACE Director. And I was the OATUG Star Presenter of the Year in 2014, the first year that that award was available. So as Tom mentioned, this series is the implementation series. We really wanted to take a look at the tips, tricks, best practices that we have in our combined 50 years of experience working with Oracle implementations. Really, it's ERP implementations, but we're focusing on Oracle, whether it's EBS or Fusion. Going back to 10.7, all the way through to the current release. So as we're recording this, that's 25C of Fusion. And really, we've got 10 sessions planned through this. So we're starting today with how actually do we end up, how do we know that we've ended the implementation? Really, what defines success? We're going to have sessions on how we drive requirements, which is actually starting with financial reports. Again, it's starting towards the end. This is the information I need in the system, or I need from the system to help me design how the system is going to work or what I'm going to need out there. We're going to look through turning those requirements into test cases, how we know that the system's going to work, because we're going to need to test it. We're going to talk through conversions, so mapping conversions, how we can validate that the conversions are actually working correctly. And the one that's near and dear to our hearts, which most of the other areas of implementations hate, which is getting the accounting right. Regardless of what you're implementing, there's accounting involved somewhere. Even for our HCM brethren, where it's more than jobs and people, obviously, but they still need a ledger. So we still need someone to talk about accounting in there. We'll talk through process playbacks. That's the new cool term for conference room pilots, so how we can ensure we have a successful process playback session. And then finally, getting into the nitty-gritty, how, what, and why we're going to test the system. Before we can go live, it has to be tested. We have to have all those requirements we identified earlier, turning into test cases, and we can actually show that all those test cases and requirements have been met. We're going to talk through Chemleys, whether we call it Chemley, Rice, Rice W, or as one of our colleagues said, Gazintas and Gazouters. We're going to talk through those and our approaches for those. And then we're going to get to the really cool stuff. So talking through change management, making sure that everyone is on the same page, whether it is third parties, whether it's our internal process team, whether it's external parties, making sure that change management is covered. And finally, how do you ensure that you can repeat the success? So lather, rinse, repeat. How we can make sure that once this implementation has happened, the next one goes through just as smoothly, if not more so. So Tom, really, what defines success? What do you think?
Well, I'm going to start with the definition, and I got this just from the internet, but the success is the accomplishment of an aim or purpose, right? So when you start a project, as I said earlier, or a meeting, or a sprint, or a task, what are you trying to accomplish? What are you trying to achieve, right? So at a macro level, if you're talking about a Fusion implementation, the trite and easy answer would be to say, well, we got them live. And that certainly could be a true statement, but if you get the customer live, but they don't adopt the full solution, they don't follow the processes, they continue to report out of Excel, they don't use the dashboards you've created for them, then was the project successful? I would say it was not. You, the implementation consultant, certainly have a role in defining success, but I would certainly say it is less than what the customer's role is. You should get your goals, objectives, but not the approach from the customer. Document those things and get firm agreement from the customer that if those things, those goals, those meetings, those things are met, you have defined success.
Absolutely, and it is one of the tricky things, dealing with so many implementations. Certainly in a public sector world, you have documentation already for what they are looking for. Your life is certainly a little easy. I want to adopt best in practice systems, and I want to be integrated and blah, 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 and cut close times down, all that kind of stuff is certainly documented. On the commercial side, it tends to be slightly longer to get those information because the client hasn't thought about it. Public sector entities spend money on getting these requirements documented, so they have other parties involved who will say, you haven't thought about this, do you want to put this in there in those requirements? Whereas in the commercial world, it's more, yeah, I need financial spun up, can you do it? So we certainly take a look at that to get our success. And it certainly is important throughout the implementation to keep coming back to those definitions of success. Are we on track to get those? Are people adopting the dashboards? Are they using the dashboards as we're going through our process playbacks? Are they getting that information, actually tying it out? If they're still just saying, oh, okay, we've loaded all the data, let me check it out in Excel. Yeah, that's great, but you've just built these tools. Use the tools to get it out there.
Thanks, Lee. So how do you define success? Before we go into this, I'd just like to say that the content in this deck and really in the other 9 decks that we're going to be covering over the next few weeks or months over these videos, this is based upon our experiences, not only as implementers, but also as users of the system, mistakes that we've seen other implementation firms make, mistakes that we've seen our own colleagues make, mistakes that Lee or I have made. I do think that you learn the most out of making mistakes, and we certainly have been doing this a long time, and therefore, by definition, we've certainly made a lot of mistakes. But you want to identify who the stakeholders, that is, who is invested in the project, right? You want to identify those people that have a vested interest in seeing this project succeed, and what's going to make them successful and make the project successful. Related to that, but no less important, you really want to identify those people that do not want the project to succeed, the naysayers, the negative personalities that are challenging or difficult. And I will tell you, you will be tempted to push them aside or ignore them. I know I was certainly often in my career. I am still tempted to ignore those people at this stage in my career. But to do so, you do so at your own peril. That resource, whether they're connected or not, the squeaky wheel gets the most grease. And the people that don't want the project to succeed will always have a reason for it. You need to be able to identify their concerns, address them, and make sure that they feel heard. Lee?
So, and this is an important part for, you often find who has authorized this project is one to pay attention to. Tom and I are ERP guys, right? We're financials, we always talk about financials part. And when you have a project that the financials folks want to go through, it's going to be more successful. If the CFO is the stakeholder, he's the one that has been engaging you, or the controller, it's going to be golden. As soon as you find out that IT are the ones who are pushing for this project, you know that the financials folks may have some issues with this. Why are we getting off this system? We love this system. We're being told to do this from IT, and you already have that kind of conflict that's built in those projects. So just being aware of that kind of concept for how you can get through this. Whether you have someone who's been in the system, working on the system for 30 years, they know how everything works. It's great they know how everything works. But you'll also find that those are sometimes the folks who no, that's not going to work because X, Y, and Z. And no, we need that field because someone back in 1995 needed it, so we've always done it there. You've got to be aware of who those folks are and how you can either encourage them to get online or spend more time with them so they do have some buy-in there. As well as getting those people who have the most to win out of this, you've got to get from them how they expect the goals to be measured. You know, we see so many things of I need the close to be, I need to be able to close in 3 days. Great, it's something that's specific, it's measurable, it's something we can go to. If someone says they want to hit one button, everything's done. Okay, it's an objective. May not be realistic that it's one button having everything done, but you at least have the goal of what they're trying to do. Once you have that information, now you're getting to the essential tasks. What do I need to get set up to ensure that part happens? Obviously, I've got a ton of setups out there, but I'm specifically focusing on those items out there.
So defining who accountable, being accountable just means who's going to take ownership of outcomes and ensuring the project meets its goals. And that is on both sides. There's accountability on the client side, and there's really accountability on the implementation side. Especially if you're working multiple work streams, you really need to understand who owns what work stream, who owns what module, and what it should do. Again, having a RACI chart, it's a very nice thing to do, and I would tell you it's super important. Accountability is crucial for project success. It prevents chaos, and it ensures that tasks are completed with clarity and efficiency. I read a book about leadership and teaming and by a woman named Brene Brown, and she's got a couple statements that really hit home, and one of them is clear is kind. So, she also used the term, what does done look like? So knowing what success is, knowing what clarity is and how you're going to do it, really defining your roles, defining your performance expectations, and how you're going to evaluate process. So defining who is accountable. Next, you got gather the project goals and objectives. Again, that really should come from the client. What defines success? When the phase, the wave, the project, when it's done, what does done look like? What are you trying to achieve? And then, of course, the essential tasks. That is what has to be done for the project to succeed. Who's doing it? When are they doing it? And how is it going to be done? All right, so let's talk about who are the stakeholders. So for the systems integrator at a macro level, your stakeholders are your boss, your director, your partner. To them, success might mean simply going live on time, on budget, and making a few bucks. That certainly is our goal. Most implementations will do a stakeholder analysis at the start of the project. It really is a good idea. I would tell you that, I would love to tell you, that we do it on every project that I've ever done, but it's maybe 50-50 at best. But if you can do it, even if you're not getting paid to do it, I would tell you it's worth it to take an hour or two and understand who wants a project to succeed, and as I said a few slides ago, who doesn't. Do it internally, right? Understand who you're responsible for, and two, if you're the PM, if you're the sponsor, you might not have any insight into the sale, so it's a good idea to understand, again, who you're speaking with. If you're given a timeline and a budget, you need to ask, is it reasonable given the scope and the resources? If it's reasonable, that's great. You're fat, dumb, and happy. But if it's not, why isn't it reasonable? And your stakeholders should be able to answer that question. And whether that's your boss on the SI side or it's the customer on the implementation side, you just have to know. The stakeholders touch all facets of the implementation. The stakeholders could come from the end users or touch the end users. Certainly comes from the customer sponsor, the SI sponsor. It's going to come from your consumers. That could be the end users. It could be your customers or your vendors, depending upon what your integrations are. And certainly, it should come from the steering committee.
Okay, so what are you going to be responsible for? Anything that involves looking at the scope, at costing, at schedules, that's the project manager. If any of those components change, there is going to be some kind of issue on the project, and that you're going to have to take it into account. It's going to affect the other two. If the cost goes up, then the schedule either has to increase or you're pulling it in. If the scope changes, if you take things out of scope, the cost should hopefully come down. The schedule may be able to move up. It's something that the project manager has to keep on top of. And it's those three constraints that really gets you to a successful project. Unfortunately, while it sounds easy, it's tough as anything. There are people that are project managers and there are people that are not. I'm smart with a system. I can set a system up. I'm an ideas guy. If I'm your project manager, we're going to have some issues out there. But you're looking for the kind of things that the project manager is looking for. They're directing the project as if it is their sole purpose in life. That's what they're looking for. They're looking to bring their experience for other implementations onto this to make sure that, hey, I've seen when we have scope creep out there, it's going to be a problem. This is how we need to rein it in. They're going through planning. They're making sure that people are available. If there's any blackout dates around period close for ERP projects, if the entire building shuts down for 2 weeks for the holidays, they're making sure that all that is taken into account and we have no critical tasks that are going through there. They are also there to serve as empowering all the implementation resources we have out there. And we'll talk through those in a little bit, but making sure that they actually have the ability to make decisions and to provide guidance for how the project's going to happen. They're looking to make sure that everything we've talked about so far, the squeaky wheel that's going to need to get heard out there, they're making sure that kind of relationship, those people are getting the attention that they need out there. Essentially, they're making things happen. They're there to orchestrate everything. In the case of music, they're the conductor. They're making sure that everything comes in, people know when they're needed, when they need to drop back, and we go through there. And certainly, we're looking at the items we have. So now we're looking on the right-hand side. They're ensuring quality. So whether it is the requirements and the process mapping, they're making sure that the system configuration is happening. They're keeping on track with everything. There's going to be some interrelated setups out there. They're making sure that is happening. They're keeping on top of data migration. They're keeping on top of testing and validation. Most important one out there is the end user training. At some point, someone's going to need to use this system, so they're making sure that the documentation is kept up to date and the training happens. And finally, once you've gone live, once we've got success and everything's happened, they are making sure that any post-live support, who is actually keeping the system fed and watered to make sure it's going through. Essentially, it's quality. Everything they're talking about is quality.
Thanks, Lee. That brings us to our SMART goals. You want to make your goals SMART. So for each phase, task, work product, have a goal, have a timeline, have a success criteria. A good way to do that is to make sure each team member knows where they are in the project, what tasks are completed, what tasks are open, what needs to be done and why, and of course, how to do them. That should map your methodology, and hopefully it maps to your project plan and task plan you have for each person. So what does it mean to be specific? I know it says it on the slide, but they should be clear. They should have a very specific item of what you want to achieve. why it's important, and who is involved. For example, instead of saying, I want to go live, a specific world goal would be, I want to go live to improve our close, or I want our close process to be shorter. I want our time to hire to be quicker. And those things you want to have, numbers around them. So our time to hire could be 90 days. We want to get it down to 15 days. Specific really does help you manage what you're doing, how you're doing it, and how you're going to achieve it. Measurable. We talked about this. You should be able to track your progress and measure the outcome, right? So we want to complete this sprint in 4 weeks. We want this deliverable completed in 5 days, right? Have a goal and review them on a weekly basis. It really does help your project. They should be achievable. And this is the bane, I would say, of most implementation consultants. Whether it is coming from your PM or your client, there's never enough time, there's never enough budget, yet somehow you still have to get it done. My experience has always been, and again, I've been doing system implementations for a long time. Implementation consultants will take the most amount of time to do something as they have budget to do it. So it's unfortunately a negative, a cynical view, but I really do see that. So when you're the PM or even the customer, make sure you understand what somebody needs to get something done, and that it is achievable. And if it isn't, what is achievable, right? So if you ask somebody, I want this deliverable done in a week, they say, I can't get it done. Okay, great. When can you get it done? And that one should be specific on their part, and it really should be relevant, which gets us to the next one. Make sure your goals align with the objectives, right? I see consultants all the time want to get something done because reasons. They've never done it before, or it's new and it's cool. If you have a goal, it really should contribute to the success of what you are trying to accomplish. Whether it's go live, whether it's completing a CRP, completing a deliverable, right? Have your goals be relevant. And again, as I said earlier, make sure you review these things on a regular basis, if not weekly, certainly no less than monthly. You should have goals, your team should have goals, and your customer should have goals as well. And then finally, time bound. Set a deadline for your goals, create a sense of urgency and prompt action. Asking anybody to do something without giving them a specific time is a sure recipe for disaster. Unfortunately, I'm very guilty of this. I give people goals, and I'm usually loosey-goosey on the time bound, and they typically do not get done. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound, that is smart.
And certainly that last point is the thing that project managers will focus on. Every project that I've been on, you have tools that track these dates. You can't just say, hey, Tom, I need this next week. Is it in the project plan? Is it assigned to Tom? Has it got a date of whatever next week is? If I've got issues and bugs that I'm resolving and I've got some system, I use Jira on my projects. Is it assigned to someone? Is it a time? If it's coming up next week, hey Tom, you're aware that you've got this for next week. If the date has passed, hey Tom, why didn't got this done? But if you don't know when something is due, you can't be bound to it, you can't be held to it, and everything's going to start slipping because at some point something else is going to relate to it.
All right. So wrapping it up here, we're talking about Fusion Task Essentials. This is very specific to Fusion implementation, but why are you doing something? Identify what your purpose is, make sure it aligns with your organizational goals. Clarify what deliverables are going to support your project, support your task, support your implementation. Establish your approach. Everybody should have a methodology. We're going to talk about that in one of our later presentations, but why are you doing it, what are you doing it, and how are you doing it? You would be amazed at how often consultants don't want to do that, project managers don't want to do that, customers don't want to do that. They want to just jump into the software, jump into the solution, but without having a repeatable process, you are not setting yourself up for success.
Okay, thanks for that, Tom. So, this session has basically been what defines success. We've gone through each of the items out there. We identified the stakeholders, who has a hand in this, who can control the outcome of it. We've gone through identifying your goals and objectives. getting agreement that those are the goals and objectives, they're achievable, they're smart, they're measurable, they're achievable, they're relevant, they're timely, and then how we're going to document it, how we're going to measure it. That is the focus of this session. I think we've nailed everything out there. If you'd like to know more about any of this, you want to reach out to us. Tom and I are both on X. You can hit, it feels so wrong, it used to be Twitter, but we're on X, at Thomas Simkis, at BT Lee Briggs. You've got our LinkedIn accounts are up there as well. If you found this video, you know that we are on YouTube. We're on at Afternoons with Aces, where all our videos are. Everything from this series will be up there. Our next session is coming up in a couple of weeks. I think it's coming out next week. Our next session is actually starting with the requirements, so using our reports to drive those requirements. Until then, thank you for your time and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, Lee. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.